I never believed in the supernatural. I always thought that every strange noise in the night had a logical explanation, and that ghost stories were just that, stories. But what happened to me last autumn changed everything I thought I knew about fear. This is the story of the man in the orange raincoat and how he haunted my life for months. I'm sharing this because I need someone to believe me. I need someone to know what really happened.
It started on a rainy Thursday evening in late October. I was living alone in a small town in Oregon, renting a house on the edge of a dense forest. The rain had been relentless for days, and the sky was a constant heavy gray. I was working late, trying to finish a project for my job, when I heard a knock at the door. It was almost midnight. I wasn't expecting anyone, and I hesitated before getting up. The knock came again, louder this time. I peeked through the peephole and saw a man standing on my porch. He was wearing an old, faded orange raincoat, the hood pulled low over his face. He didn't move, didn't say anything, just stood there, letting the rain pour down on him. I waited, hoping he would leave, but he just stood there. After a few minutes, I called out, "Can I help you?" He didn't answer. I felt a chill run down my spine. Something about the way he stood there, so still, was deeply unsettling. Eventually, I turned off the porch light and went back to my desk, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling in my stomach. When I checked again a few minutes later, he was gone. The next morning, I found muddy footprints on my porch. They led from the steps to the front door, then back down the path toward the woods. I tried to convince myself it was just a lost hiker or someone looking for help, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Over the next week, I started noticing strange things around the house. Sometimes I would hear footsteps outside late at night, crunching through the wet leaves. Once, I found the gate to my backyard wide open, even though I always kept it locked. My dog, Max, started acting nervous, barking at the windows and refusing to go outside after dark. One night, I woke up to the sound of tapping on my bedroom window. I sat up, heart pounding, and listened. The tapping continued, slow and deliberate. I forced myself to get up and look, but when I pulled back the curtain, there was nothing there, just the rain streaking down the glass. A few days later, I was driving home from the grocery store when I saw him again. The man in the orange raincoat was standing at the edge of the woods, just off the road. He was facing away from me, but as I passed, he turned his head and looked directly at me. I couldn't see his face, just the shadow of his hood, but I felt his eyes on me. I sped up, my hand shaking on the steering wheel. When I glanced in the rearview mirror, he was gone. That night, I dreamed about him. In my dream, I was lost in the woods, the rain pouring down, and everywhere I turned, I saw flashes of orange between the trees. I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart racing. The next morning, I decided to talk to my neighbor, Mrs. Callahan. She'd lived in the area for decades and knew everyone in town. I asked her if she'd ever seen a man in an orange raincoat around the neighborhood. Her face went pale. She told me that years ago, there had been a string of disappearances in the area. People would vanish without a trace, usually during the rainy season. The only thing the missing had in common was that before they disappeared, someone had seen a man in an orange raincoat near their homes. Mrs. Callahan said the police never found him, and the disappearances stopped as suddenly as they started. She warned me to be careful and to stay inside after dark.
After that conversation, I became obsessed. I started locking every door and window, double-checking them before bed. I bought security cameras and set them up around the house. For a while, nothing happened. I started to think maybe I was just being paranoid. Then, one night, the cameras caught something. At 2:13 a.m., the motion sensor on the back porch went off. The footage showed a tall figure in an orange raincoat standing at the edge of the yard just beyond the light. He stood there for almost 10 minutes, unmoving, before slowly turning and disappearing into the trees. I called the police, but by the time they arrived, he was long gone. They searched the woods but found nothing. The officer told me it was probably just a drifter, but I could tell he didn't believe it himself.
A week later, I woke up to the sound of glass breaking. Max was barking furiously. I grabbed a flashlight and crept downstairs, my heart pounding in my chest. The back door window was shattered, rain blowing in through the broken glass. I called out, but there was no answer. I could hear footsteps upstairs. Slow, heavy, deliberate. I called 911 and told them someone was in my house. The operator told me to stay on the line and hide. I locked myself in the bathroom with Max, clutching the flashlight and a kitchen knife. I could hear the footsteps moving through the house, pausing outside the bathroom door. For what felt like hours, I waited, barely breathing. Eventually, the police arrived. They found the house empty, but muddy footprints led from the back door, up the stairs, and back out through a window in the guest room. The only thing missing was an old photograph of me and my parents, taken when I was a child.
After the break-in, I couldn't sleep. I started digging into the history of the area, searching for any mention of the man in the orange raincoat. I found an old newspaper article from the 1970s about a man named Arthur Bell who had gone missing during a storm. His wife claimed he'd been acting strangely, obsessed with the rain and the woods. She said he would disappear for hours, returning soaked and muttering about the man in the orange coat. There were other stories, too. Rumors of a local legend about a spirit that haunted the forest, appearing to those who were alone and vulnerable. Some said he was the ghost of a lost hiker. Others believed he was something much older, something that fed on fear.
The sightings became more frequent. Sometimes I would see flashes of orange between the trees when I walked Max. Once, I found a small orange button on my porch, slick with rain. I started getting phone calls late at night. No one would speak, but I could hear the sound of rain and distant footsteps. I stopped going out after dark. I stopped sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, standing at the edge of the woods, waiting. One night, I woke up to find my bedroom window open, rain blowing in. On the windowsill was another orange button and a muddy handprint smeared across the glass.
I decided I couldn't live like this anymore. I packed a bag and made plans to stay with a friend in the city. On my last night in the house, I sat in the living room, waiting. I wanted to see him, to know if he was real or just a figment of my imagination. At exactly midnight, the porch light flickered on. I looked out the window and saw him standing at the edge of the yard, rain pouring down around him. He raised his hand and pointed at me. I grabbed my flashlight and Max and stepped outside. The rain was cold and heavy, soaking me instantly. The man didn't move as I approached. When I was about 10 feet away, he finally spoke. His voice was low and rough, barely more than a whisper. "You shouldn't have come here," he said. "This place belongs to the rain." I tried to ask him who he was, what he wanted, but he just shook his head. "You can't leave," he said. "Not until the rain stops." I turned and ran back to the house, slamming the door behind me. When I looked out the window, he was gone.
The next morning, the rain finally stopped. The sky was clear for the first time in weeks. I loaded my things into the car and drove away, not looking back. I stayed with my friend for a few days, trying to convince myself it was over. But the nightmares didn't stop. I kept seeing the man in the orange raincoat, standing in the rain, waiting. A week later, my friend found the orange button on a doorstep.
I moved across the country, changed my phone number, tried to start over. For a while, things were quiet. But every time it rains, I feel that old fear creeping back in. Sometimes I catch a glimpse of orange out of the corner of my eye. Sometimes I find muddy footprints outside my door. I don't know who or what the man in the orange raincoat is. I don't know why he chose me or what he wants. All I know is that he's still out there, waiting for the next storm. If you ever see a man in an orange raincoat standing in the rain, don't look at him. Don't let him see you. And whatever you do, don't let him in.
Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever experienced something you can't explain, something that made you question what's real, you're not alone. Stay safe, and remember, some things are better left unseen.